The candidates are going to give us their pitch for the top job in around 60 seconds. We've drawn lots to see which order they go in. And Emily Thornberry is going to kick us off. Good morning.
Good morning. So we took a hell of a beating at the last election. We're 80 seats behind. What does Labour do now? Well, it's going to be a long, hard slog to get back into power, but I think that we can do it. And I think that we can do it if we do it with energy and we apply ourselves and we take the fight to the Tories. And we take the fight to the Tories with a leadership, a leader in me that would take the fight to Boris Johnson, as I did, as I have done for the last 2 years when he was Foreign Secretary. I was the one who shadowed him. I've done Prime Minister's questions. I have the experience. I have the passion to be able to do this. But in the end, you know, what we need to be able to be saying to the public and listening to them and learning from them, but what we need to say is this, is that Britain can be better than this. It doesn't have to be this way. We can take our country into a different direction. But people need to believe in us and they need to think that we're credible, because if they don't believe in us, if they don't think that we're credible, they will not vote for us and they will not give us their trust, because we could do so much more.
Thank you. Rebecca Long-Bailey, morning.
Well, like all Labour members and supporters, I was devastated at the election result because I knew what another 4 years of a Conservative government would do to communities like mine in Salford. After 10 years of austerity, stagnating wages, cuts to our public services, our communities were desperate for change, but they need a leader to show them that that change is possible. We need to tell a story about how a Labour government will realise people's aspirations, whatever their postcode, whatever their income. We need to press ahead with a green industrial revolution, our biggest economic opportunity for national renewal in a generation. And we need to show those who've lost faith in politics that we'll end the gentlemen's club in Westminster and we'll shift power to their communities. We need a plan. I've got that plan. It's about aspiration and it's about the Labour Party saying that we are the party of quality of life. With every passing generation, our children's lives will always be better than our own. And that hope currently doesn't exist in our communities. I'll bring that back.
Thank you. Sir Keir Starmer.
When Labour wins elections, we do amazing things. We created the NHS. My wife's mum's just been in intensive care for 17 days, which is a real reminder for us about the quality of the NHS. We introduced equal pay, and we had Sure Start for young children, 0 to 5, makes such a difference to lives. That's what we do in power. We've just lost 4 elections. So we've got a choice now, haven't we? We can, on the one hand, mope around, blame each other, take lumps out of each other. What was the reason for it? It's somebody's fault. If we do that, we'll lose. Or we can pull together. We can say the next stage of the journey is for us. We can take us from where we are now back into power. And that's why I want to lead the Labour Party, to pull it together, to unite, to bring together the passion, the dedication, and to turn us into a force. I want all of you, all of our members and supporters, to feel, actually, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of history. And I want to look back in 5 years' time and say, actually, I made a real difference to my party, my movement, and my country.
Thank you. Lisa Nandy, hello.
I'll be honest with you, this contest is hard, and not just because of the scale of the defeat or the gravity of the crisis that we face, but because every morning before I go out and fight for a better world, I have to balance the obligations I have to my young family with the support of parents who are growing old at different ends of the country. And in that, I am no different to any single one of you. And that's what keeps us awake at night, a social care system that lacks humanity and warmth, that isn't there for people when they most need it, a childcare settlement that means it's virtually impossible to be good children, good parents, and hold down a job and make a contribution. That is why I'm seeking your permission to lead this party and to lead this country, so that I can show the courage and the ambition to reach out across the political divide and build a consensus that will help us to fix this crisis, these problems that politicians have hidden from for far too long. With your support, I know we can do this, and we can build the Britain that I've believed in all my life, but never yet seen.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Let's go straight to the audience. Chris Evans, he's a lifelong Labour voter from Eccles. He's a shop steward at Tesco. He's a union worker. Chris, the last general election was a first for you. Tell the candidates why.
The reason why you didn't go with the people who voted a Democratic to leave the European Union, and loads feel the same about it. How are you going to change that to make the people understand that you are with them and you're going to start listening to them instead of doing what you want to do, other than what the people have put you there to do.
Chris, what was the first for you, though? At the last general election, you walked into the voting booth and what?
I walked into the voting booth, my family, my dad, my mum, my brothers, my sisters, we've all voted Labour all our lives. I walked in and I just couldn't put pen on paper because you wouldn't go with the people who voted to leave the European Union. I've been Labour all my life and I protect people throughout the Northwest, and I'm hearing the same thing, that you don't listen to them. You've got to get out your little boxes and go and talk to them and see what they want, because if you don't, you're just going to lose again and again and again. You've got to move on.
Bill Johnston's here. Thank you, Chris. He's a retired former mechanic. He's former director of an office furniture company. Almost always voted Labour, except this time you voted...
Conservative.
Why? Tell the candidates why.
I've voted Labour all my life. All my life, excuse me. I've got a sore throat this morning. Except when Michael Foot was there and Jeremy Corbyn. We had an excellent MP in John Mann in Bassett Law. Did a great job. Spoke to him a couple of times.
Why did you vote Conservative then?
I didn't like Jeremy Corbyn.
Why not?
I think that's the biggest reason. And I didn't like the nationalisation policies. I couldn't see a future in it. I'm not like a lot of the young people here. I remember the 70s and the economic chaos that followed in the 80s. And that was because unions had control of the workforces.
Why are you able to express why you didn't like Jeremy Corbyn?
I didn't like his stance on terrorism. I didn't like the fact that while the IRA were bombing and killing innocent people in this country, he was supporting them. And, you know, I've got family there who go into a rage when you mention it. One of them was an ex-policeman. Absolutely detest him. In Bassett Law, there's a group of us, very strong Labour area, and you got absolutely slaughtered. Not just being absolutely slaughtered. I think it went from was it a 7,000 majority to 15,000? It was a massive swing. And that's what you've got to overcome. It really is massive.
Tony's here. Thank you. Tony Murray Plasterer, originally from the Wirral. You love Jeremy Corbyn, and actually you are anxious that these candidates will move away from Corbynism, and you don't want that to happen.
That's exactly it. I'm sort of the opposite in a sense. I describe myself as a lapsed Labour voter, you know. I never voted for Gordon Brown or Miliband or Tony Blair in the end of his time as PM. And I think it's really important that we have a party in Britain that has a socialist agenda. And when Jeremy Corbyn came, there was some things I didn't like, but on a whole, he brought me back to Labour. I voted for him, and I'd like to see it continue, really, you know, a socialist agenda and Labour going back to their roots.
So you have to, I mean, there's the sort of dilemma writ large. You have to bring those supporters, they're all Labour at heart, but on different sides, really, you have to bring them together. Tell them why you are the person, Emily Thornberry, to do that.
I think the first thing is that what I hear from people is a great belief in our country, is a form of patriotism. And that's not jingoism, that's just, you know, our country could be better than our country is at the moment, and people feel that we've lost our way. And there's a great concern about the future and how are we going to do this.
Specifically about how you bring those two sides together.
But, so what I'm saying is that is one of the things that unites us, is this idea that we have lots of challenges now in front of us. It's going to be hard after leaving the European Union. We know our economy is going to be challenged, and we need to make sure that we make decisions together and that we are as united as we can, which does mean listening to people up and down the country. I went to Bassett Law a few days ago and listened to people in Bassett Law and was overwhelmed by the distress that people felt, that they just felt that for a very long time, actually, that they hadn't been listened to and that they had been overlooked. And it is really important that people believe that their politicians who are there to represent them are properly engaged with them. And so...
OK, I'm going to move on, if I may. And specifically, the question is how you bring those two together.
We listen, and that's really, really important. And thanks for raising the points about Brexit. I've obviously heard them many, many times. we're all about to say what we're going to do. Let me tell you what I've been doing for the last 3.5 years, because I voted Remain, my constituency is heavily Remain, so I spent a lot of time in areas that voted Leave, actually having conversations with people, gritty conversations, tough conversations, but actually the respect of actually going and having that conversation was huge. And what I did in those was try to explain why was it that we were fighting Boris Johnson on his deal. Because his deal, I think, is going to do huge harm to our country. And we need to get that across to people whilst listening to what they have to say.
Once you've listened, then what?
Well, we need to listen to people who, as if Remain Leave is over now, we've left. So to some extent, I think for us in the Labour Party, we need to make sure that we don't carry this divide, because it's split families, it's split our party. We have left now, we need to move on. But what we can't do now is say, Brexit's over, because there's nothing Johnson wants more than us to not look at what he's doing, because he's made loads of promises about Brexit he's not going to actually deliver. So we need to focus on that. There were very many reasons that we lost the election, though it wasn't just one. And one of the problems of political parties is they try to find one reason and say it was all down to that, it would have been plain sailing otherwise. And it wasn't, as we've already seen from the various contributions this morning.
Lisa Nandy.
Everything that you said, I've heard for the last decade. And I think that Brexit was the straw that broke the camel's back in ex-coalfield communities like mine, but this has been a really, really long time coming. I think we have to be clear about our values. I think we have to be honest with people. We want to make deep, fundamental, transformative change in this country. We believe in public ownership. We should be clear about that. We want a compassionate society where we're decent and kind towards people, especially people who are facing adversity and have difficult lives. But we also need to show a level of respect to people. And when we asked a question and said, it's up to you, we should have been respectful of the answer. I'm somebody who campaigned for Remain. I wanted to remain, and if I'm honest, I still want to remain now. But I accepted the fact that we lost that argument, and when we promised in 2017 that we would leave the European Union with a deal, we should have gone off and fought for that deal and agreed that deal and got on with it. And I think we have to be honest with people as well. It's not just about listening. Politics is about leading too. And so when I say to my constituents who want to leave the EU with no deal at all, I will never support this because it is bad for your jobs. They listen to me because I'm respectful to them. And most of all, we have to go out and we have to win the argument. I believe in public ownership, but I understand and have heard so many people saying the things that you've said over the last decade. We've got to get out there into the country and win this argument with the people.
OK. How do you bring people together? I mean, you heard the differences there.
I did, and I'm actually from Eccles as well. That's where I live. So the anger was palpable in our community, and I was knocking on doors and people in Salford were saying, Becky, love, I like you, you do really well, but we can't vote for you this time, or we're not going out to vote this time, because they were so angry. They saw us playing parliamentary games and not talking to our communities. And we paid the price for that. Many of our Leave voters thought we were trying to undermine the referendum result. And our Remain voters thought that we weren't going far enough in having a strong relationship. And the compromise solution didn't work. And we can't regurgitate the arguments of the last 4 years. What we've got to do now to win back trust is to set out a positive vision of what Britain looks like outside of the European Union. And we can do that. And to touch on the point that the gentleman made about public ownership, I prefer calling it public ownership, but that was central to our economic plan, but we didn't have a message that showed people that our economic plan was about creating industries of the future. It was about aspiration and making people's lives better. And using energy as an example, we were going to take energy networks into public ownership, not because ideologically we love it, it's because we wanted to invest in them networks so that we could create businesses of the future to connect into those.
You heard the anger. You say you're going to listen. I wonder if you want to take this opportunity to apologise to your supporters for that thumping general election defeat.
We've all got to take responsibility for it, because we're not going to move on if we don't.
I don't think you can answer for the other three candidates. I'm asking, do you want to take this opportunity to apologise?
I was for myself. I mean, the others will speak for themselves.
So go ahead.
We've got. I'm sorry for the result. Of course I am. For our members, for those MPs who won't return, for the millions of people who desperately needed change at that general election aren't going to get it.
Are you going
Emily, hang on a minute. Emily Thornbury.
I was completely devastated by the result, and I was devastated by the fact that we're going to have another 5 years of a Conservative government, and who knows what they're going to do to us.
Would you like to apologise to these people here?
No, and as part of the leadership team of the Labour Party, I apologise for the failure, and I frankly wish that we had not called a general election in those circumstances.
Rebecca Long
I think
Bailey.
that we should have
I am sorry,
not
just-
had a single issue election, which is what it was, and the Conservatives had 3 words: get Brexit done.
Thank
and
you.
we had 3.5 paragraphs and tried to change the subject, and we weren't going to win in those circumstances.
Okay.
And I apologise for us going into an election like that where I don't think we would have won.
I am sorry because I know what this is going to do to people in my city and around the country and how much they're going to suffer and how we're not going to have hope for at least 4 years. But we need to recognise that we're the party of transformation. We can provide that future of aspiration.
But you were
where we know our
rejected.
children
You
will
were
always be better
rejected.
than us. I don't think it was our policies specifically, but we didn't package them together. We didn't tell people what our policies
People in the
would
audience
do.
saying, yes, it
And
was.
well, sometimes what we did...
I'm going to come to the people who are saying yes, it was.
Sometimes what we did, and this is where we got our messaging wrong, we tried to appeal to people by telling them we were going to save them from themselves, that their lives were so terrible that we were going to be the knights in shining armour to come and save them. But a lot of people don't feel like that. A lot of people
Okay.
feel as though
I'm
they're
gonna go
doing
to
well.
Lisa Nandy,
they
if
want
I
to
may.
do better, and they want aspiration, and we need to make them realise that.
Do you want to apologise, Lisa?
Yeah, I am sorry. I am sorry that we didn't just not listen, but we're not learning. We got defeated and rejected in 2010, 2015, 2017 and 2019. And I am standing in this leadership contest because I have heard you and I am determined that we will bring Labour home to you.
Who said, yes, it was the policies? Put your hand up, please, and do take the microphone if you may. Do stand up and introduce yourself. Hi, sir. Good morning.
Hello, my name's Jay. I'm a former Labour voter. I voted Tory for the first time at this election. Your manifesto was an absolute joke, an absolute disgrace.
Why?
If they had just put a manifesto that we would have reversed Tory cuts, you would have done so much better. You was free internet. You'd nationalise and everything. You would have tanked the economy. I've got no trust in Jeremy Corbyn. I've got no trust in Corbynism. The party is so far to the left now that it's falling off the scale. It's gone from the centrist part. Tony Blair would have won that election, and that's why I back Sir Keir, because I think you're the only one who can put the party back in the centre and unite the left and the right.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Ariana Hart. I'm from Croydon and I'm a student currently. Can I just say the Labour Party was literally built off the back of unions. How can you say that it should be a centrist party? That doesn't make sense in itself. That is going away from what the Labour Party was built on. And may I just ask how you're going to continue to get the support of people like myself, young people from ethnic communities, how you're going to continue what Corbyn did to get us to vote and actually register?
Oh, I'm going to bounce around and I'll come back to you in a moment. Yes.
Hi, I'm Ella and I left the party due to anti-Semitism. I think we can all agree that the Parliamentary Labour Party didn't do enough to fight anti-Semitism. Some people rated their efforts 10 out of 10. What I'd like to ask is, what in hindsight would you have done rather than leave it up to people like Luciana Berger and Ruth Smeeth to fight on their own?
We are going to come to anti-Semitism later. Let's just bounce around a little bit more. Who's got a microphone? Yes, gentleman in the... Has he got a mic? Oh, no, there's a lady on the front. Yes.
Hello. Thank you for your apologies. First and foremost, I think they're needed. But I want to move the conversation forward now and not look back. And I'm sure that voters feel the same way. How are you going to all the candidates, how do you plan to counter Tory agendas like Brexit through actual policies and not get bogged down in this sort of north-south divide and you know, unite us all as socialists? Through actual policy, how are you going to do that? Let's talk about the nitty-gritty now rather than bouncing around rhetoric, because I think people are just tired of it.
They may be. I just want to know from your point of view, do you think these candidates sound like they have learned the lessons from the defeat, or do you think some are still in denial?
I think some are definitely still in denial, absolutely.
Would you like to say which ones you think are still in denial?
I have to say Keir Starmer, but...
Why do you say that?
Sorry?
Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, you only have to look at sort of the way that he's behaving throughout this campaign.
Well, you can talk to him, he's right there.
But I do think... well,
he's in the room, he's in the room.
Well, but I absolutely think that... for me, Rebecca has been the only one that has touched on actual policy and continues to talk about real implementation.
Okay, because I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk directly to one of your supporters. She's not mad on you, but she's a Labour supporter.
No, look, one thing that's really good about this competition so far is that all the four of us have done a number of events together and we've positively put forward the case that we think is right. We haven't taken lumps out of each other, and I'm not going to start doing that now. I just want to push back slightly on this issue because I stood at the dispatch box so many times trying to get a deal we could leave the EU with. I put I don't know how many amendments forward, but what I wasn't going to do was go in a lobby with Boris Johnson and vote for his deal, which I thought would damage the country. So I apologise for the loss at the election, but for heaven's sake, let's be honest about what we were doing. We were trying to prevent a hard Brexit, which I genuinely think would lose thousands of jobs. My dad worked was a toolmaker, worked in a factory. We've now got brilliant manufacturing jobs across the country. I do not want to see them gone.
Okay.
But we did try to leave with a deal. We couldn't win the votes because we lost the last general election, and that's the price of losing a general election.
So do you still want to be in the single market and the customs union? Do you think that should be the relationship, even though we're now outside the
Well, we're outside
EU?
now. We're outside now.
So does that mean no
I do think we need to stay close to the EU because that's where most of our trade is. And what I worry
Does
about...
that mean the customs union?
Can I just finish it? What I worry about, and it does go to the future, is I am convinced that Boris Johnson will rupture our trade with Europe. Most businesses say that's going to be really bad. He will then do a deal with Trump. He will do a deal with Trump, whatever he says now.
Can you talk about what you would do?
That will be a much worse economic model than we got now. In America, 10 days holiday is the norm. Got to be clear about what we're heading for with Boris Johnson. So yes, I want to stay close to...
Does that mean the customs union, yes or no?
Well, we can't be... I mean, now the argument about customs union, we're probably the next general election's 2024. We're not going to be in a customs union for the next 4 years. We just lost that election.
Right, so that's out. That's out as far as you're concerned.
Businesses across the country, I went everywhere in the United Kingdom and said, what do you want? They said, for heaven's sake, don't make it more difficult for us to trade because it will probably end in job losses. It was very straightforward.
So outside the customs union?
People say we've got to listen. That's what businesses were saying. I don't care how you do it, but don't make it more difficult for us because otherwise there'll be job losses. Everyone says, why don't you listen? I've listened for 3.5 years, a very, very strong message. I think it's very powerful.
So outside the customs union, outside the single market, just to be absolutely clear. Yes, yes
close,
or no?
Close economically to the EU, however that is achieved. That is what businesses aren't saying in a particular way. They just want to be able to,
Lisa Nandy?
to succeed.
And then I'll pop round.
Can I just push back a bit on this? Because, first of all, we were offered a deal. We were offered a deal that met all of the key tests that we were asking for. And I think that part of the anger comes from the fact that people could see that we weren't serious about it. I didn't go and vote for Boris Johnson's deal at second reading because I loved Boris Johnson's deal. I went and voted for it at second reading because the government didn't have a majority and we had the chance to then get the close economic cooperation that we're talking about and protect people's jobs and lives. And you know what? Their jobs and their lives are more important than my job and my reputation. And that's why I did it. And that is why I will always go out and fight for this country. But can I just push back against one other thing as well?
Please.
Because you're right to challenge us on policy and you're right to want to hear what we've got to say about the future. But these formats don't give us the chance to do that. And you will hear a lot of agreement between us on policy. Becky talks about a green industrial revolution. Couldn't agree with her more. 5 years ago, I was the Shadow Energy and Climate Secretary that was calling for that put in place plans to do that I'd inherited from Ed Miliband, that were taken up by Barry Gardner, and that Becky brilliantly took up and developed and put into our manifesto. We want to talk about these things. We're not being given the opportunity to do it. And I would love for us all to be able to have a real debate about the future direction of policy in this country. There are great ideas on this panel.
I know you find it frustrating. 90 minutes is quite a decent amount of time in TV and radio news terms. I'm just going to ask you not to make speeches because we have got 40 Labour supporters here from all over the country and there's 4 of you. Let me bring people this breaking news. Esther McVey, Housing Minister, and Andrea Leadsom, the Business Secretary, have both been sacked. Esther McVey, the Housing Minister, and Andrea Leadsom, the Business Secretary, have both been sacked. Obviously, I just need to remind people we have a room full of Labour supporters here, which is potentially why there was that hooray to people losing their jobs. Right, Rebecca Long-Bailey, then Emily Thornberry, go.
I think there's a couple of points that we need to address here, and we shouldn't go over the arguments that we've been talking about for the last 4 years because our communities want to move forward.
Right, so the kind of relationship with the EU, what will it be from your point of view?
We need to make sure that we scrutinise the government's trade talks so that we get the best deal possible.
I mean, that is a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer for the leader of the opposition.
That's what we have to do from opposition. If we were in government, it would be a very different picture, but we're not. We just lost the election with a devastating defeat, and we've got to accept reality. But what we do now as a party is set out what a vision of the future will look like. We've already already talked about the Green Industrial Revolution. That is one policy that has the ability to unify the country, whether you're a deindustrialised area in one of our heartlands, whether you're a rural area, whether you're young voters desperate to tackle climate change, whether you're older voters worried about losing your job in industries that are affected. Sorry, but it's that exciting. It's our biggest economic opportunity that we've had in a generation.
Does that sound exciting to you? Does that sound exciting? Some yes, some no. Emily Thornbury.
What? Sorry, I've zoned out for quite a long time here.
Okay. That says something about how you feel about the candidates talking this morning.
I'm just like, you know.
I'm talking... We were originally talking about our future... Everybody's saying... our guest here is saying we want to look forward, we want to move on. In terms of our future relationship with the EU... What should it be? And
okay, so what our future relation with Europe should be is it should be a close one. We need to be negotiating. Boris Johnson is not negotiating.
What does close
Hang on,
mean?
Boris Johnson. Come on, I've waited a long time to speak. Let me speak.
So tell us what close means.
So he spent the last month trying to work out what sort of design there should be on a 50p coin to celebrate leaving the European Union, and for Big Ben to bong. You know, that's what he's been doing. But he should be negotiating with the European Union, and he should be negotiating a close deal. And he's only got until the summer.
What does close mean?
And what it means is something that's going to look after jobs in this country and the economy in this country. Half our trade is with Europe. But he wants to do that at the same time as he wants to negotiate with Donald Trump.
Sure.
Now, what Donald Trump wants to do is have no regulation. The European Union wants to have lots of regulation. If goods come in from America into the UK, we cannot be the hole in the wall whereby goods then go into the European Union. So we're never going to be able to do those two things. And furthermore, there are another 60 countries with whom we have trading relationships, we have trade deals because of being part of the European Union. So if we're leaving the European Union at the end of the year, right, without a deal, then exactly what is going to happen to our trade with Europe and the 60 other countries, and how desperate will we be when trying to negotiate with Trump?
What does close mean?
It means I think it should be that we are closely aligned in rules and regulations so that we can export things backwards and forwards with our biggest trade partner.
Do you want to be able to do independent trade deals with other countries, or are you not bothered?
I think our biggest trade partner is the European Union, so we need to be clear about that.
Staying in the customs union.
No, what I'm saying is, we need to trade closer with our... Listen, geographically they're close. We do half our trade with them. Sure. Are we really going to be putting up walls between the European Union and Britain? Okay. And if we do that, what is going to happen to our children's jobs?
Right, let me read some messages. Stuart on Twitter, interesting to hear them apologise and take responsibility for their party's failings. Ben on Facebook says, if this is the best Labour can offer, more of the same, then they're likely to be in the political wilderness for many more years. Zim on Twitter says, please ask Emily Thornbury to apologise to Scotland for her use of the word hate in her anti-SNP rant.
I did. I got up in Parliament and I said I shouldn't have used that word, and I'm very sorry. Okay. And because I said that the Scottish Nationalists, I said I hated the Scottish National Party. I shouldn't have said that. I should have said that I dislike them. I dislike the way in which they are using nationalism all the time as an answer whenever they fail on anything they're doing in Scotland when they've been in power for 10 years.
And Mike says, I'm a lifelong voter for Labour. Until this election, I've never voted for any other party. I voted for Boris. It was because the way the Labour leadership acted over Brexit. It's 10 o'clock. Thank you so far.